and welcome to episode 72 of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin. Who are the strange customers with me today?
Hi, Stefan JD.
What's that? Stuart Hughes. Oh, wow. This is lame. Again, I'm ambushed. Yet again, this is Sam.
No shit. This is Jesse Chavez.
Hey, we got 5 people this week.
We haven't done 5 people since Resident Evil 2, maybe? Or have been another one?
You know what's unfortunate is the last episode we had more than 4 people on, I'm pretty sure was the holiday special.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that traversity.
Yeah.
So, first, Stefan, why don't you introduce what we're playing? We're going to be talking about.
We're going to be playing the developed Capcom Production Studio 1 game, Resident Evil Outbreak, that came out in 2003 on the PlayStation 2.
2004,
yes, I love those
guys.
North America.
Initially released in 2003 on the PlayStation 2.
In Japan.
In Japan, 2003 on the PlayStation 2.
Yes, it originally started as a project called Biohazard Network, and it featured, originally it was supposed to be 20 scenarios spread out across Racoon City, and the end result is we got 10 out of those 20 broken up over File 1 and File 2.
Mm-hmm. And this is a game. When I first got it back when I was a teenager, I actually had the ability to play it online with people, but my dad didn't want me to run a cord from our computer modem to my room, so I never got to do that. This is initially my first full playthrough. Originally, I only did the first 2 campaigns. So
and we're only talking about the first one. We're not going to be talking about file number 2 because we didn't have enough time. And because it wasn't planned. We'll do that in another episode someday.
Yeah, I'll make my references.
Time for File 1. This game is pretty like
intense?
ahead of, it's intense, but it's also like the game itself is really ahead of its time too. It's worth noting because this came out in 2003 in Japan, and it was a game you could play online. Like, the idea was to play it online with multiple people, which we tried and failed to do because it's 17 years later and servers aren't what they used to be.
I mean, there is a way to do it, but you need...
There's a very complicated way to do it.
Yeah, we were going to try and do that, but I at like halfway through figuring it out, I was like, you know what, fuck this. I got better things to do.
Well, it's also
might be my favorite message from Stefan, is because I looked at it a little bit myself too, and then Stefan at some point messaged like, oh, I've got to download the Japanese version of the game, and I was like, oh, we're not doing this. And then like an hour later, you were like, fuck it.
Yeah, I looked into that whole process like a year ago, and when you guys mentioned that you were going to do it, I was like, all right, like if you pull it off, like count me in. But
yeah, because we were going to try to do it for like our our huge playthrough of the whole series, I think. It's just like, nah, it's not happening.
You have to do so many things. You have to change the BIOS, and you have to download a Japanese version. You have to sign into an online account for the servers, and then you have to connect the game to that, and then you have to figure out how to change it all back when you want to just play regular games. So no,
you just install 2 different emulators.
Yeah, I was just like, nah.
And you have to do it through like a VPN, like Hamachi or something. It's like just a nightmare. But I mean, like, this was an online game that came out a year before like World of Warcraft came out and the first Star Wars Battlefront. This was a year before Halo 2. Like, this is...
I should really add on top of that, the Japanese server actually ran like all the way to like 2014, I think. 2013, somewhere in that area. It was really popular.
There still is a community that's keeping it alive on a private server, which is what we were trying to set up. But like, yeah, the community isn't dead yet for this game. It's got a cult following.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I am not surprised at all. After like, I had never I've seen this game once before. A friend of mine had introduced it to me back when it came out, and I didn't care about it. And now going back and playing it, I completely can see why people still play it.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna give Jesse shit for still playing RE Resistance, but that wasn't good enough, Capcom. You need to do better, because I want a full Outbreak game. Resistance sucked.
I will maintain that Outbreak is the best Resident Evil online experience that we'll probably never get to play.
Oh, well, we've got 2 very different opinions here, Sam. So it looks like I still have to get it to try it with you at some point.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think Resident Evil Outbreak, this might be an unpopular opinion, next to Resident Evil 1 is the most deserving of a remake in the entire series, and that this is the most unpolished gem in the Resident Evil series by far.
It was
I'm actually
too ahead
going
of its
to agree
time.
with you. I'm definitely going to agree with you on that because I was trying to think while playing this what other survival horror multiplayer games are out there, and some background with me and Sam, we've played most of them.
Yeah.
I think we've put like individually we put like 70 hours into The Forest at least.
Yep.
A couple hundred hours into like DayZ.
Yeah.
We played a lot of World War Z, which isn't even like a horror game at that point. It's barely survival. A lot of the survival horror like co-op games that are out there are more just survival games, or they're more action games that you play together.
Mm-hmm. With
And
horror
this-
elements. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was like really
Well-
scratching an itch that is, I think, desperately missing from like games today.
Mhm.
Yeah, the puzzles aren't oversimplified. Like they don't really dilute the puzzles from the Resident Evil games that came before it. And I really have to appreciate how Capcom was very adamant on not including voice chat in this. A lot of people give the game shit for that. They're like, but I want to be able to tell someone where I am. I'm like, yeah, but in a horror situation, you're not always going to be able to do that.
My
Yeah. And the
my
a-
counter argument is proximity chat.
Yeah, proximity
Should have
chat.
that was a huge mistake. It was a colossal mistake to not include any type of voice chat. This game is an execution or a labor of frustration because of that, I think.
Mhm.
I intensely disagree on that one because again, it's part of the immersion. And again, like I don't know, just the level of detail that they put into it. Because, like, for example, the ad lib system, which is thousands times better than Resistance, since Stefan had to throw that fucking shade at me. Asshole. But anyway.
This is
Can I?
Uh,
I think it's worth mentioning that this is my unpopular opinion. I don't think multiplayer games really need voice chat anymore because most people when they play multiplayer games are talking to each other on like either if they're on a computer they're typically on like Discord or Skype or even on Xbox. I played so many multiplayer games on Xbox where I'd be like in a party and I would never talk to anybody in the game. And
Yeah,
I got to the
same.
point where I
Now
was
it's
like,
redundant. Yeah.
I'm like, what's the point? Like Steam has their own in-chat software. And I'm like, what's the point, Steam? Like, you're not like people play Steam games with Discord open. No one's using Steam's
which
chat.
leads me to the other plus in this system. You don't have to listen to 11-year-olds screaming at you.
Yes,
gosh, yeah.
this is a great thing that was avoided. However, in my playthrough, I loved each of the individual voice lines. The problem I had is that the bots would spam them relentlessly over top of
God.
one another.
Yes.
And it was immersion breaking in and of itself.
And they're all Resident Evil voice lines. So they're
Yeah,
all
they're
like
terrible fucking voice lines.
yeah.
My
just
life
like-
is shit.
Whoa.
My life is shit.
No. Like the spamming, yes, is definitely a problem. I'll chalk that one up to the file size, because there's only so much they can cram on a DVD, and they have a ton of voice lines. I will say, mentioning Outbreak in America, File 2 actually did remove the voice ad libs for the context ones, not for the like help or come here or Yoko, but like
Yeah.
like they Capcom caught onto that pretty quick and like, yeah, we're not going to have them spamming lines over and over anymore.
There's 8 characters who talk in this game too. We should mention that. There's Kevin Ryman, who looks like Tom Cruise.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah. Thank you for saying that because that was like
There's
he
Mark
looks just like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, there's Mark Wilkins, Jim Chapman, George Hamilton, David King, Alyssa Ashcroft, the second master of unlocking, Yoko Suzuki, who is a student and works for Umbrella, and Cindy Lennox, who is my future wife, if she was real.
Waitress.
I would like to point out that Alyssa Ashcroft is like there. As soon as I saw her, I was like, there is no way this person is not a bad guy because in the Resident Evil universe, the rules say if you're wearing red, if you're blonde, if you have Ash in your name, or if your name is like Alyssa or something, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
And everything is working against her. Where I'm like, she works for Umbrella, right? Like she is definitely linked to Umbrella. And no, she's just a good person who's like a reporter trying to expose them. I'm like, but your name is
balls of
Ashcroft.
steel,
You're
I should
wearing red. Your hair is dyed
But-
blonde.
I personally, she's my spirit animal. I love in the first scenario when the cops are like, yeah, you're on your own. This is a dead end. She's like, oh, I see how it is, you bunch of pussies.
Yeah, I like ended up liking her character a lot. And I was like, I don't trust her. What's going on?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like Bo Billingsley because he's voiced by Bo Billingsley. I like Mark Wilkins because he's voiced by Bo Billingsley, who voiced Jet in Cowboy Bebop.
All right.
Famous.
Yeah. I wish they would have kept him for File 2. They changed the entire voice cast between the games, and it's a painful note.
Yeah, I feel like there was backlash to the voice chat, the way the system was set up, and I feel like they were like, oh, we need to change all of it. It's like, no, you've got some really good voice talent with you. You just need to like expand on it and like give them room to like be appreciated rather than just saying, oh, we're gonna get rid of Bo Billingsley, one of the best voice actors of all time.
Yeah. Speaking of the voice acting, though, small note: the voice acting and the motion capture for this game was directed by Alison Court, who was the original voice actress for Claire.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah. She even has a cameo in this one. I don't know if any. She's the at the very end of the scenario, the very final cutscene where it shows Racoon City destroyed. She's the receptionist. Like, you have a call on line 1. It's like, Claire. Oh,
Wow,
that's your
nice
summer
catch.
job.
I'm imagining, as I do with every game we play, I always imagine it as like like what a remake would look like of it. And the remake I have in my head of this game is like phenomenal because of just how much character interaction there was clearly meant to be and how much there ended up being. There's such a disparity between it. Like, there was clearly meant to be characters like communicating within each other, talking about what's going on and reacting to it. And instead it's just like a line that comes up that tells you what's happening, but then the way the character says it is completely different, where a line will say like, we need to get off this ladder, and then Yoko yells, it's such a pain.
Yeah. Sometimes the voice context really works out well. Like, it'll be like, do you have anything? No, I don't. Or, do you have anything? Yes, I found something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bastards take key items and run away with them.
Yep, I had a big problem with that. Boy, was that annoying.
One of my favorites is I think it's Yoko who's just like, no shit.
Yeah, so
Oh, that's Alyssa.
That's Alyssa. No shit. Like every 5 seconds.
if anyone doesn't know the story of Raccoon City, because I'm just going to set this up real quick to move us along.
Sure,
We've kind of already talked about it. Basically, small town,
In like 4
Midwestern.
or 5 different episodes.
Yeah, Midwestern small town, overrun by a virus that makes zombies, and there's BOWs, evil corporation running it, Umbrella. And this game has 5 scenarios. One that starts off at the actual initial outbreak, running around the city, which I don't know about you guys, but that blew my mind, that original first scenario.
Yeah, the first scenario is fucking amazing. Like, that's easily my favorite of this game, of the 5 scenarios in this game.
Well, it's the scenario, it's the setting you've always wanted to see, because it's always mentioned, but it's always, over that hill, over there. It's happening over there. And this is the reason why this game is so awesome. It puts you in that spot you've always wanted to be. The initial outbreak.
I think it touches on something on why this game is, I don't know, for me it's a personal favorite. It's because, again, you're not starting as a super cop. These are 8 normal people hanging out in a bar, having a normal night after work, and they get to witness all hell, just like when the tipping point finally breaks over and they can't ignore the problem anymore.
Yeah, does anyone else laugh at the waiter walking by?
Oh, God.
What a strange customer.
What a strange customer.
Oh, God,
Some of the line reads are just bizarre in this game.
Yeah, there's one where like someone's trying to break into the bar, and like one of the character doesn't say it out loud. Obviously, it's like a subtitle, but the character goes like, "Huh," and the subtitle is, "Do they know we're closed?" It's like,
I think that's a Cindy ad lib.
Oh man!
I just like the idea of the voice actor getting that line and being like, "I'm not saying this dumb shit. I'll just go, huh, huh."
There's gems.
It's such a Resident Evil reaction of just like I love how every Resident Evil game it's a staple in all survival horror games from like this era, where like you'll go up to a mirror and your character will say something dumb that's like kind of introspective of like was this me? It's a line that would only exist in like a B horror movie. And that's all Resident Evil is still that like same like, oh, what, you saying he's a zombie? It's like, yeah, you're getting it. Yeah.
I don't know when Capcom figured out that they needed camp, but for all these early games, I like to assume that they don't realize they're putting the camp in. I think the voice actor really did read that line thinking like, hell yeah, I nailed it. That was a great delivery.
Yeah, I think it's honestly it's like it's a constant battle with Capcom of them like not realizing how camp they were and then coming to terms with it, and then like diving into the pool way too deep, and then like
Chris
having
in
to
the
take a
boulder.
step back. Yeah,
I-
Chris,
I-
like the entirety of Resident Evil 5 is camp,
Yeah.
and it's like I love that. I love how camp it is, but that was definitely Capcom saying like, oh, this is what people want, and then afterwards having to be like, oh no, they didn't want that much. Like the
Yeah.
reason why I
Right.
think the original games are so beloved is partially because it has that like unintentional camp factor to them.
I think the camp kind of peaked for them around Code Veronica, and then they tried scaling it back because I can tell they're trying to take it a little more seriously in Outbreak. Like they still have some ridiculous situations, but it's they decided to put more of their camp factor into like Dead Rising. They're like, you know what, let that be the one where we go absolutely balls to the walls goofy.
What are you
Yeah.
talking about, Jesse? You're telling me, come on, Claire, was campy in Code Veronica? I don't.
Two
That was the
Lugers,
least
cool.
That was the least campy part. All right, I'm talking about the cross-dressing, a sniper rifle wielding twins
Yeah.
going full Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Resident Evil
Sounds like making
Zero,
the voice
like
act.
just going like, I think this game's gonna be like a survival horror opera.
Oh God.
That's what people
All right.
want.
Two things that I need to say because one,
Hold on to
definitely
I
check out our rest of the. We've done tons of Resident Evil episodes. Check those out. It gives you more background on Resident Evil. But also, like the way that this game plays is it's broken up into 5 scenarios. Each scenario originally roughly about 20 minutes, and then the last one's about an hour. So I would say about 20 to 40 minutes for the first 4. And the first one we've been kind of talking about called Outbreak, which is in the bar. But the way the game plays is you have about 8 characters you can choose from every time you start.
8.
And they're all roughly, each one has something different. Like one, the fake Leon carries a gun.
the fake Leon.
That's what I call him.
Well, he
fake
carries
Leon.
he carries an extra powerful gun, a 45 caliber handgun, and then
Requires
Mark
different
carry-
ammo.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mark starts out with a normal basic handgun, and he also has a guard ability. Cindy carries a pouch for extra herbs. Alyssa can do pot shots like Kevin the cop as well, where she does a special aim and her hit does twice as much damage, and she can pick locks. Jim can play dead, where he just drops to the floor and he gets ignored by enemies, but it also causes the virus meter to like accelerate. George can make medicine out of various herbs. He can turn blue herbs into recovery pills, or he can take medicine base and make recovery pills and antidotes and stuff like that. Yoko has a backpack which allows her to carry more items. She gets a full 8 slots where everyone else is limited to their 4.
Which is
Awesome.
annoying.
Yeah.
The 4.
It's
It's too little. I mean, the
Who am
point
I
of it
for-
is that you always do have 2 other NPCs running around with you. So the idea is that if you do have other items, you can give them items to carry as they're running along with you. But again, since they're NPCs, they might go wherever. Like in most levels, they stay with you. But there were a few times when they went off somewhere else, which I'll talk about later, and took a key item.
Oh yeah,
And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Where the fuck's the key item?" And it's in the guy's inventory. I'm like, "How the
Yeah.
hell did you get it?"
that happened to me a lot. This initial level though in the bar is where the outbreak comes and visits your characters, and what they do is they try to escape, and you actually kind of get to see and help out the Racoon Police Department. You know, you're moving cars to block zombies and setting off bombs. It's actually really cool because it does, like Sam said, it shows you the people fighting for their lives against the outbreak. in the
Yeah, it's
city.
that nice like ground zero like environment, which is like almost never done in zombie games, and even like zombie movies. Like I still remember the remake, the Zack Snyder remake of Dawn of the Dead, which is an okay movie, but that opening shot is still like fantastic because it shows the chaos of like the beginning of a zombie outbreak, and that's always like in any game, they're like, okay, this happened and now you're in it. It's like, no, I want to see it happen. I want to be there when it happens. Like that sounds like the cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to
Outbreak
see the
is pretty
chaos unfold.
Outbreak serves as the thesis statement to the rest of the game, where it just establishes this is the outbreak. You are here. You are not a super cop. You're an essential worker. Deal with it.
You're an essential worker.
I would have killed to play this game online because single player was unbelievably frustrating, but I could see what it was trying to be, and what it was trying to be was amazing. Like, I'm so mad this game hasn't gotten a chance to be remade. And I'm so mad that when Resistance was coming out, they teased it as out.
Yeah. I feel bad talking about this game because we're going to talk it up because I think a lot of us are actually really impressed by this and like it a lot. But like it is a problem because we're saying like, oh, this game is great, but we're basing it on the idea of what the game was meant to be when it came out, playing it online with multiple people. And that's just like, that's not impossible, but it is the next closest thing to impossible right now.
I would say even with the single player, like the five, I'm not an RE fan, as anyone listening to the show knows. I love Resident Evil. I love the brand. I fucking hate playing the games because I don't like horror games. But this was a intense experience. Like the whole game I was entertained. It even though like there are 5 different chapters, well, essentially 10 if you play both, 10 different chapters that don't really connect. There is no overarching story. It's kind of like an arcadey type where each level is a brand new experience because you don't keep anything. But it's still a good RE game.
Yeah, and that it has like the RE heart to it, which is impressive because that is like there are a number of Resident Evil games that have come out where Capcom's like, we're going to do something different, and quite a few of them lack that like central heart, and that's such an important thing to make these games worthwhile. Like I think Sam and I had a huge conversation about this when Resident Evil 7 came out. We're like, it's a completely different game, but at its core, it still has the heart of a Resident Evil game.
Oh, you're gonna love this.
It's impressive.
Part of this, Alyssa, I think it's Alyssa, the reporter. Her name is in Resident Evil 7 somewhere.
Yeah, there's an article she writes.
So technically, part of this game is canon.
Yeah,
Well,
actually,
also
this
the
entire
police
game
station.
is canon.
Yeah, the whole game is canon.
Oh,
Both file 1 and 2 are canon.
Yeah.
The police station level, the
Outbreak?
central statue not Outbreak, the first mission, but when you're in the police station, you're in the RPD, the central statue that moves down so you can escape through. That's what RE1 RE2 remake
I
based
don't
there.
think that's in this one.
Oh, is that in Outbreak 2?
There's no
Yeah.
police station in this.
I got them mixed together. The scenarios don't play out the same. Love them, but
I will touch on remakes. The remakes really love Outbreak and have a lot of respect for them, because for those who keep an eye out, there's a ton of references to the Outbreak games scattered throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
The name of the police officers in the West Office, those are all Outbreak characters, with a couple exceptions, and
with the exception of JoJo.
Yeah, the inclusion of Mr. Raccoon from the Wild Things Raccoon City Zoo level in file 2. So like there's I could go on about that, but I won't, because I don't want to derail
not
the
file 2,
episode.
because we'll get there eventually in the show.
Let's not forget that the team for the Raccoon City is the Raccoon Sharks.
Yeah,
Just
the
in
Raccoon
case
Sharks.
anyone forgot about
Yeah.
that.
Established in Dark Side Chronicles.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, but I do want to talk a little more about the first level. Like that whole first level, like when you're trying to escape the bar and you have to find the keys. Like one thing about that, really in the first level, the zombies never stop coming, which makes sense. Like they keep busting into the bar that you're in. If you go into an area, you have to put in one part, you're supposed to put boards up in a hallway, and they'll eventually break it down. But they just keep coming because
You have to keep moving.
And also we briefly mentioned it. The every level you are infected with the virus, and as the level progresses, every time you get hit, the virus will speed up faster. And if it gets to 100, well, of course, you die.
There
This is
are
the only game that's happened in. This is the only game where it's had a virus gauge, which I loved the suggestion that like everyone's infected and everyone's gauge is gonna go until you get to decisions. As far as you know, like your character's going to die.
yeah,
That's
one of
always
the-
like go ahead.
it's all right. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's always like it's always left out of Resident Evil games, and the assumption that I've always had to make with Resident Evil games is that Leon is immune for some reason, or like canonically he just never gets bit in the first couple games, and
Or
I've
less
always,
susceptible.
yeah, like I've always wondered, like in the first Resident Evil, if you play as Chris, you could, or if you play as Chris, or Jill, you can see Richard. Is it Richard who's like getting infected and Rebecca's trying to help him?
By the snake.
Yeah. But he
He's
gets bit by the
poisoned.
snake. So it's like I always like it's nice to have a Resident Evil game where the virus is also like a legitimate threat and not just a plot point.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
the fact that people are getting sick and you could turn into a zombie. I think Sam and I've been playing World War Z a lot lately, and I love that in World War Z. If you die, you turn into a zombie, and that's like that doesn't like I would love that in this kind of game.
Well, that is in this game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of the
if you're in
greatest things
online
about it.
mode,
yeah.
you can actually turn into a zombie and take revenge on your teammates if they left you to die or killed you.
It's one of my favorite. It's a smaller game, and I think it was kind of under the radar, maybe deservedly, because it wasn't like the best game, but I think it had a lot of the same appeal that Outbreak had. It was called Contagion, and it was essentially the same kind of story. Like you're with people and you've got to survive and get to like the end of a level, and it's like the closest thing to like a modern version of Outbreak that I think we've gotten. And that was one of the aspects of it. I love that if you died, you essentially became a zombie and you could like herd other zombies to the survivors. And so I would play it and be like, I kind of hope I die so I could just ruin everybody else's escape.
Yeah.
If we played online together, there would have been a lot of that going on.
Oh yeah, we probably would have never finished the level because one of us would have gone off to die purposely. I am now the bad guy.
Coming back to the scenario, though, I gotta say I really have to appreciate the breakneck speed that it moves, because you have to basically, you can't go out the front door because there's zombies outside, so you have to make your way up the building to the stock room, which is for some reason on the 3rd floor, which I'm not going to question that one too much, but but then you have to go all the way to the roof, and then you have to break a fence, and then you have to jump to the apartment building next door, and then you have to go down through the apartment out to the street, and you keep going until you reach Main Street, and you find that it's just filled wall to wall with zombies, and there's police that are trying to like set up a bomb, and they like die in the process.
Yeah.
And then you have to blow up the entire street.
It's great.
It has the same
sense.
feeling to me as like when you come across the village at Resident Evil 4 and you're just like pushing shit in front of doors, like trying to block, like barricade yourself in and go up on the roofs and like get away from the massive zombies.
It is the start of the outbreak. You board up one of the doorways, and that buys you what, like 30 seconds, maybe. Zombies pile up and they rip it off. You're trying to get up onto the roof, and you're not knocking the fence down, which takes some time. And there's zombies coming at you and zombie crows. You get down, and what I love is when you finally come back down into the street and you meet the police officers, you can find little notes and articles that are like clearly the foreshadowing of this event happening, and they even reference some bizarre murders that happened of young blonde women disappearing, referencing Resident Evil 2's Chief Irons and the murders that he was doing. Like, this game had all the lore I wanted in that first scenario, and like I just wish that whole thing could have been expanded to. Well, I mean, it was Outbreak and Outbreak File 2 were all these little incidences in the one place I cared about the most, the heart of Racoon City.
Yeah. It's my Resident Evil 8 idea come to life, essentially. but
if
like
they were to ever make a Resident Evil TV series, I know they keep talking about it, but if they ever get around to it, this is the perfect template for one, I think. Like small contained mini series more likely, but like this would be it.
Yeah, it's funny that even like Walking Dead, when it started, Walking Dead starts with what the fuck is it? His name is Lincoln. Andrew Lincoln is the actor.
Rick Grimes.
Rick Grimes, yeah. It starts with Rick Grimes waking up like 6 weeks later, and they skip the entire like initial outbreak.
I know.
Like,
I don't know why they do that.
I just like I don't know if it's hard to write that or if it's hard. It wasn't in the graphic novels, which I get, but like you can add that in or like do something later. Like this is like, and they tried that with like Fear the Walking Dead, where like we're gonna go back to like the beginning. It's so rare that happens, and I always wonder like, is it hard to figure that out? Is it hard to write that? Is it that just writing that it would end up having to be its own story and you would never get past it? I don't know.
Maybe for like an opening season that would have been too big on the budget.
Maybe.
Side note before I go back to the game, originally they were supposed to go back to that. They were going to show the fall of Atlanta, but they fired Frank Darabont and they scrapped all that because AMC, they don't give a fuck.
Well, AMC never has like, AMC is so rarely gets a long form TV show that like is able to run continuously that they just panic. They lucked out with Breaking Bad, and then any other show they get, they're like, oh, it's 3 seasons. Fuck, what do we do? Fire everybody.
Originally it was going to be an episode, and it was going to be seen through the eyes of that soldier Rick finds dead in the tank, essentially. But anyway,
that's why I think I love another graphic novel like 30 Days of Night so much, because it is that like. It is just focusing on like, okay, this is happening. We need to learn how to deal with it. And it's just people in the middle of it's vampires in that, but it's like essentially people in the middle of an outbreak learning how to come to terms with it. And this game is the closest to like a Resident Evil series doing that. I mean, like, oh, like the zombies are here now, and we don't really know what's going on, but we need to just survive.
I have to applaud I know the voice acting's hokey for like the ad libs and stuff, but I really do like the monologues that the characters give at the end of every scenario, where they're
absolutely.
I'm terrified, but I have to keep going.
It's
the
a nice,
sound design that accompanies, and like the voice acting is one of the weaker points. The dialogue itself is not weak, but the sound design and the music especially are some of the best in the entire series.
Favorite
The
soundtrack.
the opening segment alone, I think that's the best opening ever in a Resident Evil series. It was
Even,
a masterclass in transitions and beautiful visual storytelling.
Yeah, even just the tiny things they do just all work really well for it. Like when you're like, instead, it doesn't do the door transition typically. It does the just like a black screen and it's a heartbeat, and I love that little detail of like the heart beating really loud, and it's like, yeah, this is a stressful situation.
Yeah,
this
just
isn't Chris.
It
This
was a
is
health
Leon.
gauge also. It would
just
kind
go
of
ahead.
how much health he had.
Just go ahead and watch that opening cinematic to Outbreak, and then go watch one of those dumbass openings to the Resident Evil movies. This is what you
God.
missed out on.
Yeah.
Oh, the
It's
other
great.
thing that I do want to say is every level is also a little different, like depending on what difficulty you played on. I played on easy, of course, because it's me. And one thing I have noticed constantly is that like there's enemies that weren't in the guide, because the guides that we're reading were all normal. Everything tends to be in the same place, at least on easy in every level but one. All the items are in the same place as normal, but as I'm looking through the Wikipedia, apparently on hard and very hard, there is a mutated earwig you can fight.
Yes.
Yeah, the scissor tail.
And I'm like, oh, okay, that has my attention now.
Which tip for anyone who any listeners who plan on playing this, if you play hard difficulty, keep a can of pesticide spray. It's a one-hit kill for those.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Bug spray. Who knew?
Another thing we should mention is that throughout this game, they also have event checklists that you're supposed to do, like find this key, use this key, just random little things. And I mean, I didn't do any of them because I was just trying to beat the game as fast as I could. Well, one, you have a timer, and I'm me, so but it's interesting. Like they have, like, even in the first level, you have a security guard that's with you who's sick, who you have to carry him and escort him to the top of the roof, and then he'll end up shooting himself in the head because he's like, I'm infected. I know I'm infected. There's no point.
Well, you don't have to escort him. That's the thing.
I didn't escort him.
You can leave him to die.
I just left him. That took too
That's
much
cold,
time.
Mike. That's cold.
Well, I forgot about him.
It's a great low-key tutorial for shouldering injured teammates. Like, oh, look, you have someone who's already injured, carry them.
I never did that.
And if anyone is worried about that infected meter that keeps going up through your playthroughs, because when I initially played this, I was worried about that. I was like, God, I actually don't like that. But it doesn't really play a big role, I would say. And there's these little pills you can pick up every once in a while called antivirus pills, and they stop the infection for a small period of time. So
Herbs will do that too. If you use any herb, it'll halt temporarily.
So it's not a big part.
Only in the 5th level I was at 50%. And that was like an hour-long level for me to figure it out. So with a guide.
Yeah. That initial episode is like 10 minutes long if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I should also add, every character has a different infection speed. I think Kevin's has the fastest, and Yoko, her infection goes the slowest, hinting she's got like more antibodies.
Well, she's the amnesia lady, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one who worked for Umbrella in her past.
Which we're about to talk about. One thing I do want to say that, like, when you had mentioned earlier about how Leon, doesn't get bit, I always like to assume that some people, like in a normal disease, there's always some people that will have antibodies that just can't get infected.
Yeah, that's part of the lore, actually. It's like 8 or 10% of the population will never get infected by the T or the G virus.
Yeah, and that's just norm. I mean, that's with anything. Like, every disease, there's always going to be some people that just are immune to it.
It's hinted at in the Resident Evil 3 remake recently. That's a subplot for Jill where she's like constantly freaked out that she's just going to turn into a zombie because of her Arclay experience.
Well, it's always the question with like Sherry in the series, where she's like, I guess Sherry is like the perfect example of like, oh, she got infected and now she can just take the antivirus and not be infected, but she has to always take it. But also she's like a god now who can just heal any like damage to her. Like, it's so confusing, and I feel like they tried to, and I'm sorry, but in Resident Evil 6, I'm gonna bring up, I feel like they tried to be like, here's like the downside of it, and try to like explore a little bit more, but it's one of those things in Resident Evil I feel like they need to like avoid exploring the disease itself sometimes, because it just raises too many questions. Like, who's infected or who's immune? Like, feasibly is Chris immune? Does he have the antibodies, or is he just really good at like not getting bit?
Yeah, I mean they touch on it here and there. I don't remember her having to take the antivirus constantly. I think it's just she has a leftover healing factor because it didn't like wipe the virus out completely. It just halted its progression.
The
But that
lore,
raises the
I
question:
thought the
like,
lore was
shouldn't everyone just do that then?
well. I thought that the lore suggested that you would be okay if you caught it really early in the infection. Where you run into trouble is if you're not early with it. Like even antivirus doesn't save you; it just mutates, and like it's at least in the movies, it suggested that it was like you're fine as long as you can continue to take the antivirus. But as when it runs out,
That's the movie lore. That's completely that's a whole other realm of
But even in
fuckery.
the games, like as soon as anyone brings up Wesker, it's like, well, I don't know what the fuck the virus is. Like Wesker is infected and also in control of it, and he doesn't take antibodies. I don't think
the idea was that the T virus was supposed to, like in 1 in 1,000, give you a tyrant, a perfect mutation. That was the intention of it.
Right.
And I guess Wesker was, one of those 1 in 1,000, or mutated it in a way to pull that off. But you don't really see that in this one. And this one is just like you slow down the virus or you halt it for a short period
you're
of time.
You're just normal people, which is nice.
Yeah.
You're not,
You're
not Boulder Puncher Chris Redfield. You're some guy that looks like Tom Cruise.
I like how a lot of the characters,
Ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, some of the characters, I should say, have like a level that kind of feels like that's where they would belong in. Like in
Absolutely.
The second level below freezing point is where you start getting a bunch of cutscenes that kind of show you, like, you see a scientist putting something in a tube. You see, and you end up seeing where Yoko, who I forgot because I wasn't paying that much attention, has amnesia. She's one of the characters you can play as, and like and I guess if you play as her, she has ID cards that help her get through the place a lot faster. Which I didn't know.
This is an example of where, like, you look at this game and you see all the little things that they did, and you see their execution, and you just think of all the possibilities you'd have with a remake, all the little inserts in lore, all the nice little story moments that happen. The game is pretty light on story. It really is mostly, you get in and you get out, and minor story events kind of happen to you, which is not all that unrealistic, I think. These people are focused on, like, let's get the hell out of here. I don't want to find out why this lab is here. I want to live.
Yeah, I always equated it to, like, it's kind of like Creep Show, where it has like different scenarios of different people going through bad things, but each episode's told differently.
God, how amazing would it be if the Crypt Keeper was at the end of every scenario?
God.
I mean, I don't see it
the hotel
as each scenario kind of connecting. Like, especially this one. Like in the first one, I think you get on you blow up all the zombies, and that's kind of the end of that scenario. But like with this one, you're in the freaking lab that William Birkin's in Resident Evil 2. Like, you're in that lab, and in my opinion, they never would have, like, this is the one that you can kind of cut out because this one would never have happened. Yeah, they wouldn't have gotten in here, I don't think. I mean, maybe Yoko.
I hear you say that since you love Hunk so much.
Well, so no, if anybody hasn't known this, Hunk is probably my favorite character, and I guess he's my favorite because you never find out any more than him. Or any more about him, really. Like, there's almost no information about him. But I think this is, again, another example of where they lacked a little bit of story where they needed it. I could have seen them running into that because they had Yoko on the team, and she had some amnesia, some not. Like, hey, we should go here. I think this place is safe. Any little tidbit of information starting that mission off would have been, I think, enough to justify, hey, we found Umbrella's secret lab, like we do in every game. It's not that secret. We keep finding it.
It made me think of because Sam and I both really enjoy the first Resident Evil live action movie. Where we both admit that we both think it's I legit think it's a great movie. But it made me, that whole section made me think, like, as much as I love that movie and how, like, ridiculous it is, and just Michelle Rodriguez just blasting zombies away with an infinite MP5. I was imagining, like, how that movie would be different and how much better it would be if it was like this scenario of, like, people just waking up in that lab and there are zombies, but there's no, like, action heroes to come and save them. It's just them getting out, and the story is so minor that it's just hints as to what happened. And be like, that's a really good movie.
That plays more to, like, the Survivors of Dawn of the Dead or something, where you get to see casual people fighting as opposed to, like, a Bruce Willis super cop,
And you don't ever find out in the Dead series. You don't really ever have an idea of, like, what's going on with the greater stories of the zombies until you watch all of them and you put, like, the little pieces together that they just give you tiny hints of. Like, usually at the beginning of those movies, they'll be like, of a news reporter talking about something in the background, and that's the only story you get in terms of like the greater narrative.
A satellite crashed.
Yeah, so there was a meteorite that landed near Washington D.C. and then you like at the end you just see the cars flipped over and on fire in D.C. and it's like it would be so easy to make that movie and make it over the top and ridiculous. But the reason Night of the Living Dead is so great is because it's just 5 people surviving in a farmhouse.
At least it has a little bit of self-aware humor, though, where they interview the hick guy and he's like, yeah, they're all messed up.
Yeah.
Still got that campy humor in there somewhere.
So,
Yeah.
couple things I want to say about like the second below freezing point. It's just that level is by far my least favorite for at least like coolness factor. Like it's just a big puzzle level. There's not a lot of zombies.
Was that fun?
Huh? I didn't like it.
So, Mike, I think this is unfortunate because you're not a huge fan of the series, but at the time, that was effectively a remake of Resident Evil 2 in terms of the environments. That was the first time we had seen them remade from their low-res graphics. We'd seen them first time in 3D, and so especially at the time that it came out, like this was bored by.
It was one of the main selling points for Outbreak at the time. It was just like, check out all these environments from Resident Evil 2 and 3 and PS2 graphics.
I could see that being a huge fan service. To me, it didn't matter. I mean, yes, I played 2 and 3, but I could give a shit about that part.
in terms of narrative, I enjoy Below Freezing Point because there's an issue of trust in the scenario and the way it's written. Because no matter who you pick, usually I play as Yoko because I don't want her to die. If you play as anyone else, she zombifies.
Okay, because I shot her in the face. I thought she just got.
If you play it, you actually get more story if you play through as Yoko. And essentially, it's all these survivors that are kind of stuck with her, and she has amnesia, but she's kind of starting to piece together some of her past. And Monica, the human antagonist of this level, pretty much like talking to her as if she still remembers who she is, and she's just like, you realize like, oh, we're enemies, and I don't know you.
Yeah. Also, if you go through that scenario as Yoko, you can basically bypass like half the puzzles and just use her security card to get through it, which is great.
Yeah.
I love how much of Resident Evil logic is based on like, if you're a researcher, you can get into this lab by just swiping your key card. But if you're not a researcher, you have to solve this puzzle. And I just imagine some security chief going like, why don't we just make it so that you can't get in the room if you don't have a key card? And they're like, no, we have to give them a chance.
Yeah. You have to log in, you have to scan your fingerprint, then you have to go up 3 levels.
Whereas Yoko's just like, oh yeah, my thumbprint's already in here. Boom, bitch. Let's go.
So like they're talking to like some HVAC guy and they're like, this is a completely inefficient vent system that you've built. And he's like, yeah, but what if somebody needs to get into the lab and they don't have a key card? Like, well, then they can't get in the lab. Yeah. Like, I think I know what I'm doing. I've been installing HVAC in secret labs for 10 years, son.
Yeah. The basic setup, by the way, because I don't think we broke down the scenario. So the survivors end up in a tunnel, which, God, if they had just went the other way, they could have escaped to freedom. But anyway, they end up going starting at the train platform from the end of Resident Evil 2, and they work their way up through the lab, which has been frozen over because that was a researcher's solution to trying to prevent the BOWs from escaping the lab by just freezing everything.
One good Umbrella employee in the entire series.
Yeah.
And
I was trying to think of any example. Carlos.
I ran through that really fast though, but like all the hunters, there's a bunch of frozen hunters that you see, and then they get defrosted and they're looking to kill you, I guess. But I just ran past their asses.
Isn't that a fun way to foreshadow the danger though? You have all these frozen enemies that you can't do anything to. You have to keep running past them, not really knowing when they're going to. And then you find the heat up switch, and you're like, oh, okay, well now I know this is going to be a problem.
I love that it's kind of based on like some reality too, because like some amphibians and reptiles can be frozen and thaw and still survive. So I love the idea that like they just froze them and they're like, well, when they thaw them out, they'll still be alive. They can still like, that's how they like ship them into other countries. They freeze them and then like thaw them out when they get there.
Well, don't they usually randomly put them in like water tanks anyway until somebody just happens to walk by, then they want to bust out?
Yeah.
While it's a little known fact about Umbrella Labs, but while the labs are functional, they have a little like screen that's like a 24-hour YouTube stream playing on the labs, so just to keep like the tyrants happy. and then as soon as the lab shuts down, those go off, and so they just get it like bored and they have to attack everybody.
Yeah, it's great once you do Frost the Lab, and then you have to do the fucking battle royale at the train platform with the elevator that goes up to the storehouse, and then once you get up there, then you have to fight a G embryo, which was originally supposed to be William until the developers were like, oh, wait a minute, canonically that doesn't make sense. He wouldn't be here in this timeline. Never mind. We'll just make it a G enemy. And it sucks because they actually have a model for him in the game that we never get to see.
That makes sense. I'm okay with that because like with this being canon, you don't want to have random events that can't coexist, and having some random person infected with the G virus does make sense.
You say that, but like Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, both the originals and the remakes, do that shit constantly where they're like they're kind of like contradicting each other, and it's still great and like I don't care. But it's just like the idea of canon in the Resident Evil universe is like, does that make sense? Nah, who gives a shit? Like,
it's hard. You mean like a satellite to pinpoint one person with a tattoo?
Okay, let's not go there.
The way canon works in terms of Resident Evil Outbreak, because it's citizen, like who was doing what and where, that part's up in the air. But the way it is, like if it's anything involving a difference in maps, that doesn't count because they do make plenty of deviations. But if it's plot, like they touch on like who they meet, what happens, when they get to escape, how they escape, that stuff usually applies because it doesn't interfere with the main canon.
I love the idea of them having like a chart in their office in like the Capcom studios, or it's like canon is important, like, and it's like a list of the things that matter in terms of canon. And like number 2 is it sensible? Does it make sense? Is it like legitimate? And then number 1 is it a cool scene? If it's a cool scene, then nothing else matters.
For a good chunk of the franchise development, they actually had a Bible, and they actually kept it fairly tight in regards to most things. It wasn't until the later games where they're just like, oh, I drew this image. That looks cool. Let's use it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a lot to keep track of. There's even these things you can buy called the Resident Evil Archives, and those aren't even like 100% correct. So I wouldn't really expect Capcom to keep everything locked tight.
It's
especially
the problem
when they
keep revisiting the same events, though.
I was
like, let's
about
go
to
back
say
to
that.
Racoon.
Yeah.
Part of it too is just like at some point I just don't care. Like I appreciate it when stories are like there's an attempt to keep things making sense. But on some level, it's like it's still a story, and it doesn't really matter to me that it's 100% accurate if doing something a different way is better for gameplay, better for enjoyment, better for entertainment value. I'm fine with it.
As long as it doesn't blatantly contradict or try to remove
if there was
other
a scene
things
where
from
you
canon.
killed Wesker, it'd be like, okay, that's a little bizarre.
Well, like I always say, just choose your own canon. You don't have to follow the companies. It
the
doesn't
same thing
matter.
with like Star Wars, where it's like there's stories that, like just whatever story you like, just like it. It doesn't matter that it doesn't happen because you still enjoyed it.
You can always write your own fan fiction anyway.
Yeah.
So I have a question for everyone. The last one for below freezing point. Did anybody use the train on the final boss?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course.
I managed to get that.
Got it.
Super happy.
Yeah. This is great. I love the ad libs when you here's it coming, big boy, and just bam, knock him over.
It was cool. I like that this game, like the first level doesn't have a boss fight. You just set off a puzzle, but then every other level has a boss fight, which I thought was cool.
That's another thing. Every level, I didn't double check to see who each director was, but every level I think had a different director. That just write some of them very, very differently in style.
That makes sense.
Cool though. I can't think of any time I've ever played like an anthology game series, and that's like a really cool idea.
And I didn't realize this, that the Hive scenario it takes place in the same hospital that you go to as Carlos in Resident Evil 3.
Right.
Supposed to be.
Raccoon General, yeah.
The one
That's
hospital.
Cool. I mean, you think of Racoon City is a pretty big city, wasn't it? Like,
it's a pretty poppin' city, but it's not like I think area-wise. Yeah, it's 100,000 people, which is not that big of a city.
Well,
population of 654,000. It says.
What? Okay,
Yeah.
there's differences in the lore
city.
then.
So you're saying 100,000 people died of an epidemic?
Ouch. But Raccoon was a
Sam, you said 100,000. Mike, you said about 600,000.
Yeah.
The population of Washington D.C. is 700,000. So
Okay.
that to give reference to like what that actually means.
Thank you. So I mean, it's kind of like, to me, I just something that you feel like it might have had multiple hospitals. So I was thinking it was a different place, but I'm okay with it being the same place. And I gotta say, the Hive scenario is, I hated it, but I hated it in a good way.
What?
The Hive scenario gifts us with a pursuer type enemy, kind of like Nemesis or Mr.
Hated
X.
him.
It speaks
Leech
to the
Man.
strengths of the game and how they created it, that they would have different AI for each scenario, and this is one of them. The Leech Man is actually a pretty badass antagonist because he just falls through the vents randomly if you hang out in a room too much, which is fucking terrifying.
There's
Oh,
only
and
like
there's,
2 or 3 rooms in the hospital. You're safe.
Yeah.
And the problem for me
Must have been a
was
popular enemy
in a
'cause it came back in
room-
Resident Evil 0, and then it kind of again in Resident Evil 7.
he's in a
Yeah.
room for me that had a key item that I needed, and he wouldn't fucking leave. And I was trying to play without getting hit because I was using save states, of course, and I just couldn't do it. Like, no matter,
Did
I
you
could
use
have
the
probably
blood
lured him
packs?
out. I didn't have time for carry those things. I know
The thing
that.
that
Well,
would
those
save you all
you're
that problem.
necessary.
Yeah.
I had a couple, but I used them earlier, and I was carrying other things, so I didn't, because the 4 slots really suck.
I think I'd be remiss without mentioning, or at least bringing it up in some level. By the way, the leech, the actual leech, it's just a big old badge, isn't it?
It looked like
I actually fucked up that fight. Are we talking about the last boss fight?
no,
The
the last fight of the Hive where you fight a giant leech in a sewer.
Yeah,
The Leech
yeah.
The giant vagina monster. Like, it's
Yeah.
just a vagina monster, right?
Okay, if you're going to talk about vaginas, what about the Plant 42 that was in the second
Okay.
scenario?
Okay,
Yeah.
I think, that too, but I think the leech, like, way more so. Like, when you
It
come across
literally
the leech,
spits at you.
yeah, like, the first time you come across the leech, it's like, you're like, what the fuck is that thing? And then it starts spewing white liquid everywhere, and you're like, oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right,
that's-
then. It's like when you first
This
get, like,
isn't
a
a
good
Silent
look at
Hill
the,
game. What the fuck?
It's like when you first get a good look at, like, the face huggers and Alien, you're like, oh, they had a very clear vision of what they were trying to make.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not wrong though. It does look very
Questionable.
sexy.
Mm.
A lot of
Shows
Yannick
up.
imagery in video games for some reason.
Yeah, that's a huge thing in the Silent Hill series too. It's just like, all right, we need to make a giant monster. Okay, what's it gonna look like? Well, we already have a giant penis monster.
I
guess
feel
it's a giant vagina monster.
they're probably trying to channel their inner Geiger a bit with this one because they definitely take inspiration from Alien and Aliens,
It's
in the
so-
franchise.
Over the top. I was just like, holy shit! All right.
But I enjoyed the Hive. It was just intense running through that entire level, being chased by. And like the blood packs are awesome. I did use them periodically. It's just that I only could carry so many, and I ran out of them. But they were great because you throw a blood pack down, and that leech man just eats it.
Books it. Yeah.
I mean, I like the fact that how you get rid of him after he's chasing you throughout this entire level. You have to go into a weird heating room, and you put him in. You put a blood pack down. He runs in there, starts heating the blood. You run out and just cook him.
Yeah.
I had a lot of questions during that section because when I looked it up and I noticed that in the Japanese version of the game, the Hive is called the Den. And I was trying to find out if in like any other games or like the first movie, if in like the Japanese version, if they call it the Den instead of the Hive, or if that's just a situation in this one game.
I think in the American translation for the game, they were trying to make more parallels to the movie because the movies were really, I think this came out around the time Apocalypse was coming out. And one of Alyssa's outfits is supposed to be a reference to Alice's dress from the first movie. Yeah.
the red dress.
Apocalypse was 2004, so yeah, the first movie would have come out.
I have an advertisement for Apocalypse in the instruction book, actually.
Huh. Yeah, I should mention this. I played on my PS2, and the door load times were nearly 10 seconds each.
Oh
Yeah,
my
It was
God.
it was
horrible.
very frustrating. And
Yeah.
watching any Let's
Horrible.
Plays, like they wait for like 3 seconds and they get a door load. Like this game took so long to work through for me.
Yeah, to get shorter load times, you have to play on a fat PS2 with the PS2 hard drive installed because that was their solution. Like, just get one of those and it'll shorten your load times.
I mean, the PCX X2 I use work perfectly.
Yeah, okay,
So,
emulator boys, I get it.
I mean, there were still load times, but they were They weren't. I mean, they were longer than I'm used
They
to.
weren't
But
as
I'm
bad,
like,
but yeah, when this game came out, it was like horrifically bad load times. I mean,
and
like,
there's every time you go into a room, there's a load. There's tons of loads in this game.
I mean, if you're a Resident Evil fan, you're probably used to it at a certain point. So
Yeah.
It didn't
yeah.
bother me.
There are just times where it's like it's so much because there's some rooms that you go in and out of, and it's like, God, I've got to wait 20 seconds essentially. Like this room is going to be 20 seconds of loading. It's like, God damn it. All right, fine. Like I'll bite the bullet, but and I don't like that is like a discredit to the game, but it's also worth mentioning again that like this was a game in 2003 and that's still really impressive at the time.
yeah.
I mean, you got to think about it like this. This is dynamic third-person camera work where the camera it'll move in some camera angles, but it's like a fully 3D environment still. So,
and it's
I'm
meant
sure
to be
it
played
kind of-
by multiple people at a time. Like,
Yeah. This is
But-
also where we get like zombies actually breaking through doors because that didn't happen for a long ass time. And now in the remakes we're a little bit spoiled because they'll just walk right through them. But
Yeah.
now we're getting actual enemies not being stuck in a room once we leave it. They'll chase after you.
yeah, this is
it's not
arguably like
cutscene specific.
this is arguably like Capcom's most ambitious Resident Evil title. Realistically, like
Easily.
they were going for a lot and they pulled off a lot. I just wish it was still. It's unfortunate because it's like as much as we're talking about the game, we're gonna spend so much time saying like I wish there was a remake. I wish there was a remake. There needs to be a remake of this.
Mhm.
I would take a remaster because honestly, I'd really love if they
Yeah.
kept the style, they upgraded the textures,
Hmm.
they added the features that they added in File 2 because they actually do improve a lot of the mechanics in the next one,
Mhm.
and just kind of put it all together in one altogether like big package. And what I think it is Capcom, they don't think that classic Resident Evil would sell well anymore. They think it has to all be over the shoulder, and I don't think that's true.
It's frustrating because everyone, I think, universally hails the remake of 1 to be the greatest remake of all time.
Mhm.
It
Uh,
is.
So there's
Totally.
a market for it
Like in general, in terms of all gaming, yeah, it's just
in all gaming.
it was extremely popular, extremely successful, and it's while playing the game, I was trying to imagine like the remake of it in my head, like what I would want from it. And I was thinking of like, okay, like I've got a great idea of what a remake could do with this. That's just so fun. Of like you start off and it's like some people hiking in the woods in like the Arklay Mountains, and like the outbreak happens and they've got to get to the city. And then once they get to the city, they're like, oh, we're finally free of those things. And then the outbreak hits the city and it's just you moving through. And
I don't know. I
know.
can't wait for you guys to hit File 2.
It'll be a while, but I'll be on
Yeah.
the show, I'm sure.
There's a
yeah.
scenario that's in the forest.
oh, there is. Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great scenario.
I was trying to think like what mechanics
Mike
I
won't
want
like
in
it at
if
all.
they yeah.
No, probably not.
Like what mechanics do you think this series, if they like, let's say they remake it, is there any mechanics that this series like really needs to add to Outbreak?
No, not really.
Voice chat.
Voice chat would be cool.
They should adjust the virus gauge so that it plays more impact on characters that play it more regularly.
I think
know
get rid of the
that-
virus gauge altogether and do like a Dead Space thing where it's part of your character model.
Or maybe just have like different game types where you could choose to have it or not have it. That might be fun too.
True.
Maybe like I'd like to see like a Far Cry style like healing mechanic. So like as you heal, you like wrap yourself up in bandages and it adds to your character model. So like the end of the game, if you play it, I was like, how cool would it be to have a game where like if you play it really well and you don't get hit, you've got like a pristine character model. But if you get hit a lot, you get like infected a lot, you have to constantly be curing yourself. At the end of the game, you're just like covered in like scrappy clothes and like blood and dirt, and you just look like shit.
They actually had that in the beta for this game. There's screenshots like where you're carrying a character and they got blood dripping down their face.
Oh, see, yeah, that shit would be awesome. Like, there's so much cool shit you could do with a remake of this. Like, you could keep that core element there and just expand on all of it in such a way that like, I really think there's a market for this now.
Well, you
They,
know what we
they
gotta
also-
do.
They need a tutorial level.
Make it happen, Capcom.
Gamers rise
File
up.
2.
Yeah, File 2 figured out that there should be a tutorial. It's important.
Training grounds.
Yeah.
But
It's like a Raw Danger style tutorial where it's like a virtual reality, like corporate, super corporate, run by our like umbrella corporation beforehand. Like, here's how you survive an outbreak should one ever happen. That's so unlikely though. And you get like a little umbrella stamp, like a notebook for completing it.
Oh, another one that felt like it fit like really in well into this game of people that would be experienced is the Hellfire scenario where you're inside this 3-story
Oh my God.
hotel
Yeah.
That's a long level and it's on fire, but it's a very cool level. Like I like the idea that because it makes sense. I mean, when you have rioting and you're having a zombie outbreak or something of that nature, you're gonna have things on fire. Whether
It's not just
maybe
the
not from
zombies you
boilers,
have to
it might
worry
just
about.
be crazy people lighting stuff on fire, after they're looting, but you would still have that scenario we found out. It would happen.
Well, Mike, the reason why you might have enjoyed it is because one of the big puzzles on easy mode is nullified. You don't have to solve it.
You're talking about the thing where you gotta hit the little buttons?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
Makes things a lot easier.
I was wondering why it was so simple.
this
Uh-huh.
this is one of those moments where if you play it on easy, the other computer AI characters will kind of help you out. So I actually got lost for a long time because I was like, where the fuck is this key? Why are all the lights on already? Why is this puzzle solved? And apparently one of my AI partners was already carrying around the key. So for half an hour, I was like, what the hell?
It happened to me too. I went because the key ends up. You open this key in the statue. I went to go grab it. I'm like, where the fuck is the key?
Mhm.
And somebody else had it. And I'm like, come on now, give it to me. Give me the key.
But overall, it's like a 10-minute scenario if you know what you're doing. These are all really short, except for the last one, decisions.
Yeah.
Hellfire isn't that short.
Really short.
If you're
It
playing
is.
on normal and higher, they definitely can extend the time, and because of the amount of puzzles you have to solve, and the AI gets dumber the higher the difficulty. Sometimes you just won't make it through a scenario without someone dying, like in the Hive, which really sucks because if they die in that level, they will turn into the next Leech Man, and you could have two running around at the same time.
Oh my
Oh.
god.
Okay, it took me 24 minutes for Hellfire. Took me 18 minutes for the Hive. 27 minutes for below freezing point. So yeah, I mean
Yeah, these times are ridiculous. All my play times were like an hour each.
I had a guide. I had a
I
guide the
didn't.
whole time.
I did not.
So,
I
I won't play these games without a guide.
This level was definitely the most like Silent Hill level
Yeah.
out of the entire. Like this is the most Silent Hill Resident Evil's ever been. I feel like just the suspended enemies, which they're called the suspended, are like
Suspend dead.
the suspend dead. Yeah, they're straight out of a Silent Hill game.
Oh, did anybody carry the they weren't the walkie-talkies, were the badges from the firefighters? I was carrying around because I was convinced there was
No.
going to be like some amazing good loot. Thankfully, you did get like a little extra voice line at the end of it, but I carried around both of them because I was determined to save them.
If you bring both of those ID tags to the guy, you also unlock those firefighters who died as NPCs. Which, side note, there are so many NPCs you can unlock to play as in this game. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Stefan, when are you going to do a platinum of this game?
All character
one.
unlocks.
If there was one, he would do it.
I would have to. The only game I refuse to platinum is Resident Evil Resistance,
Yeah.
and I don't
Yeah.
want to platinum 0, but one day I will have to do it.
Don't do
and
it.
So
probably
does this
when
mean
it's
you're
on
going
the
to
show.
platinum?
Don't
Does
do
this
it.
mean you're going to platinum Operation Raccoon City, Stefan?
That's
that-
I don't even remember that. What game is that?
That's you know the one.
You know,
You
that's
actually
probably
know
our
that
best
one like an
gonna
hour.
be
Resident
platinum
Evil episode, by the way.
I hate you, Mike. I hate you.
I only hate that episode because I loved Operation Raccoon City. Then I played it again and I went, oh.
You know, that was
oh,
the
no.
funniest thing to me, that you were like, I had such fond memories of this game. And you played it again and you realized that your memories were dog shit.
My favorite thing about that episode is that
I did enjoy
like,
the
we had,
hotel.
like switch places where Mike was like, "This game is great," and then we played it. And you're like, it kind of sucks." And then I was like, "This game sucks," and then we played it. And I was like, I actually enjoyed it.
It's not Umbrella Corps. That's the best thing I can say.
Saying that,
It's
Mike.
not
You-
the worst thing I've played.
Sadly, Mike wants to put all the Resident Evil games on this show, and one day we will have to go through Survivor. We will maybe have to go through Umbrella Corps. I don't know, but I'm not looking forward to those games.
Survivor is 100% happening at some point.
Yeah, see what he's doing to us, people.
And Gaiden. But okay, couple last things I want to say about the hotel is like one, like this was a place where I dropped a key item somewhere because I had to go do other stuff, and I'm like, I already used this key. I don't need the key. Like in normal RE games, you go to a door, you press X. If you have the item in your inventory, they just use it. In this game, you have to press start and then pick the key, and at the same time, nothing's paused. The enemies are still coming at you if they're in the room. Nothing's stopped, and that's a little.
Yeah. That's an
I'd take-
important inventory note. When you go to your inventory screen, it's still in real time because it's not technically it's supposed to be an online game, so you wouldn't just pause it just so you can get your item.
Which
Mhm.
makes
Makes
sense.
for some highly stressful item trading.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I would try to go into rooms that were empty and be like, "Here, take this," and put the item out. Because to give a person the item, you have to pick the item, hit present, and then you'll hold the item in your hand. They'll come over and take it, and to take their items, you have to go to their menu and say request, and then they hold it out, and you got to press X, and it's stupid.
And there's character AI that will sometimes their personalities will conflict with what you want.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, every survivor AI is programmed differently. They have better relationships with some survivors. For example, Yoko and Alyssa get along fairly well. Alyssa fucking hates Jim. Mark hates Alyssa. George is mildly annoyed with Cindy.
Who could hate Cindy? She is adorable.
Oh god.
All right. This sucks.
Yeah, but there's other like things where you're in the heat of the moment. It really sucks. To answer Stu's question, that's one thing they could improve if they did redo this game. Like reloading sucks. You actually manually have to do that in the menu. I believe so, right?
What if they added I was
L1.
If they wanted to make it really brutal, I was thinking they could do something like State of Decay. You have to go through a scenario, and if you die, that character is just dead, and you come back in with a different character.
Oh, like zombie you.
It's like full, like they do like full State of Decay. Like Kevin dies and gets bitten and turns into a zombie, and then you come in with Cindy, and you've got to beat the level with her. It switches to one of the other NPCs, and you got to deal with Kevin and still beat the level.
Pop the trophy for that one.
So I was impressed, like at the boss of the hotel Hellfire when you fight the Regis Liquor. I like that when that zombie liquor thing, like a female version, pops down right when you get the door. You're right at the exit, pops down and then all the liquors are appearing or like spawning in the room with you or coming out of wherever they're coming from. You have to hit a bell, an alarm goes off, and they run away. And then you can go and concentrate on the Regis.
The character design looks cool, but the actual boss fight is retarded.
I was about to say, it's so funny that you enjoyed it, Mike, because I thought that was one of the lamest moments in the entire game.
Yeah, I liked it. I like most of this game. I mean, this is a good game. It's just
final damning accusation against Resident Evil Outbreak. I enjoyed what I played. It was really I was genuinely impressed the entire time I was playing this game.
Yeah. Is this everyone's? Whose first time is it playing this game? It's my first time.
My first time.
It's my first time. I'm sorry, I have to keep muting myself because I'm coughing and sneezing constantly. But yes, this is my first time playing it.
I've 100%ed this game twice now.
Jesus.
This is actually I hadn't played a lot of Resident Evil. This the first scenario, the first like 5 minutes of it is what I had played actually before any other Resident Evil game. That's where I started with Resident Evil. That and looking at all the cover art, which I should say, the cover art for Outbreak and Outbreak File 2 have some of the best cover art of the entire series. And I love it. All the versions, too. The EU, the North America, Japan, all of them. They're great. I love them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was waiting for that.
I think File 2, the American File 2 cover is my favorite, with the hands handing up the gun and Kevin trying to pull the person up.
What's really cool is I think the European version, they edit out the gun in it.
Really?
It's just a hand, like grabbing the other guy's hand, which
it's a walkie-talkie. They do the ET thing.
Yeah, it's nowhere near as impactful.
Oh my god, yeah, I'm looking at it now, and they just like it's not even a good edit. Like they just erase the gun, and so the hand is still looking like it's holding a gun. Like it looks more suggestive because it looks like the finger is shooting the guy helping him.
And Mike, I should also add that the cover art that you posted is some really crappy fan edition that has zoomed way in onto background zombies. It's not even the right cover art.
Oh,
I'm calling you out.
That will be the cover art of the episode.
I love the art of my favorite. I think is all the zombie hands, like just.
Oh, I see.
I think that's the European one. I think.
Yeah, it's the European one for the first one, and it's
that is my screensaver, by the way.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I love that.
Speaking of Europe, those poor bastards, they never got to play the online portion of this game. Yeah. Period. There was no server.
The PAL version.
Yeah, what? Yeah, PAL. It's baffling to me. I think that's something that like people don't realize with a lot of games, because a lot of games typically games will have like 3 major releases. They'll have a Japanese release, an American release, and then a PAL release, which is like everywhere else in the world. And that happens a lot with PAL releases where it's just like, like we didn't really try. Like, nah, who gives a shit if like Italy enjoys this game? And it's baffling to me that like I could talk to somebody from Italy and be like, "Oh, like have you ever heard of Resident Evil Outbreak?" And they're like, "Yeah, that shitty single player game that sucked." It's like, what?
Oh yeah.
That reason the no voice chat and the major delays that they encountered were, I think, the three damning things to this game. The reasons why it didn't go further than it did. If it hadn't been for those three things, I think we might be looking at a Resident Evil Outbreak remake.
See, those are all things they could fix, though.
It's true, and I agree, but I think they don't think this is a very important game in their series that warrants their attention.
I feel like Capcom's kind of warming up at least to it. Like beforehand, there was definitely a period in time where it felt like, no, we don't talk about Outbreak. Mm-hmm. But now they're kind of like, well, okay, you can use a bunch of Mr. Raccoon mascots in our game. Okay, you can reference these characters. Okay, you can have an article by the reporter from this game. And now they're kind of like, all right, like they're begrudgingly like, it's part of the Resident Evil family. Maybe they definitely like teasing people because every time they come out with an online game, they're like, oh, it's like an Outbreak successor. That's what they said Operation Racoon City was. And people were like, fuck you. No, it's not.
I think in general, in terms of like all media, I think we're getting to a point where people are realizing that the things that deserve to be remade aren't like the great games and movies of the past. It's stuff like this where it's like the forgotten gems or things that were like really rough on release that have a legitimate heart to them. Like I feel like movies have been in for the last 20 years really in a period of people being like, oh, another remake. And just studios like aren't really listening to that. But I think I'm hoping that we're finally getting to a part where studios like Hollywood and game studios are going to say, we have all of these titles that didn't sell well initially, and they don't have like name recognition necessarily, but they've got some charm to them and they've got some following, and we need to look at why that is and figure out like if this is a game worthy of being remade for a wide audience.
I think we should talk about the last scenario in Outbreak, we file 1, decisions.
Oh, yes.
Or as it's called in Japan, determination.
I liked this one and hated this one at the same time. I actually didn't think I was going to beat this game because of personal things that went on in my life, which I'll talk about later. And like I got to this chapter and I'm just like, I can't fucking do it. Like I tried to start it. This is one where I'm finally a walkthrough that apparently was written for the normal guide. I'm looking for this item and it just wasn't there. I checked my other characters, they don't have it. And it wasn't until later on I realized on easy it's in a different spot than it is on normal.
Yeah. I want to say, as complicated as the other levels are, they're not really that complicated. Like in Hellfire, you have 3 or 4 different levels, but there's only one hallway that goes through them, basically. And this one, yeah, it's it's like a mansion, basically.
I mean, yeah,
the first has a whole crossover with Resident Evil 3 going on.
Yeah, I mean, like the opening is like, and also this one shows them like get a letter. They're in some other random place, hideout, like the
RPD garage.
Okay, I didn't know what it was, but okay. And then they go to this university, and the university opens up like the mansion in the original Resident Evil, where you have a stairway going up, you have some rooms up on top, you have some rooms on the bottom, you have an elevator that you can't go into without because you don't have something yet. You have a secret door, or you see like a moose statue with 2 holes for jewels to go into. It's like it reminds me so much of the first game.
It was a homage to the first game for sure.
It's
good. Homage. I can't speak.
I was impressed. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are things I didn't like about this one, but this one was actually really good. As you run through this university, then you end up in the sewers, and like you end up running by hunters. Like all sorts of stuff happens in the scenario.
That's one version. Either that, or you end up going to the emission tower and instead having to deal with bees that have overtaken the tower and turned it into their.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's actually 2 different routes in this one. I took the emissions route where I went on this huge long elevator ride through like a bee infested.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh, that reminds me. Somehow, one of my characters that wasn't with me went into the hive area, took one of the key items, and then when I looked for it, it wasn't there, and all of a sudden he had it. I don't know how the hell he got there, but he just went there and took it.
Yeah, no, that's what they do. When you go one path, one scenario member will go and take the other path. Like, for example, if you take the emissions route, then you have to go down to the docks on the 2nd level after you get all the stuff you need. And they'll be standing there waiting with the key item. And they're like, okay, cool, give it. Let's go.
Okay, he was just with me. Like, he met me in the hive room. And I just took it from him.
Okay, must have been an easy mode thing where they catch up with. Because, yeah, like I said, the AI definitely gets smarter the easier the difficulty.
So that was Nikolai then, because throughout this you have a couple cutscenes, where you see a tyrant in a frickin' bikini bottom, And
Speedo.
yeah, Speedo, that's the word I want to go with. And
Good
you
old
see
Thanatos.
a Russian mercenary shoot him with some kind of weird grenade thing that like sucks.
It's a
his
blood
or something.
extractor. Yeah, he's trying to get a T sample, and he kind of just says "fuck it" and it's like, "Whatever, I'm just going to blow this place up," because he's got somewhere else to be. He's got to get back to the dead factory to try to kill Jill.
We
I gotta get back to
talked
my
about
game.
this. Yeah, we talked about this in the Resident Evil 3 episode. He is everywhere in the lore. He is in every single spot where something's going on at some time.
He is like, he knows more about Racoon City than any other human being alive. Where he's like, I've got to get across the city. I know this secret tunnel that can get me there in 2 minutes, so I have time to go fight Jill, Claire, and come back and piss off Greg.
Oh, I did get irritated in this level. There's one part you have to shimmy across there's a couple. One you shimmy across a small like wall where you're high up, and I guess the wash can knock you down or something.
Oh yeah.
I didn't have to deal with that because they weren't there on easy. But there's a part where I had to cross a pipe, and this hunter would kept knocking me in the water, and then he tried eating me or something. And I had to finally stand off to the side, line it up right, and shoot him with a grenade launcher round because that's all I had on me to get rid of him.
Oh, is that the Hunter Gammas you were talking
That's the
about?
Hunter Gamma,
Jesse?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't go that route.
Yeah. Did you?
I didn't know there were two
sharks?
routes.
Oh yeah, it's what I love. It's one of the things I love about Outbreak because it's designed to be played by multiple people at the same time in the same level. It's not as linear in its level structure, so there's so many alternate routes you can take. And this particular scenario, I think, has the most branches out of the original 5. Because there's you could go to the emission tower, or you can go to the sewer, or you could walk on these docks and try to avoid the zombie sharks when they're jumping off to get you. So many things that could happen.
You don't ever want to fight a Hunter Gamma while drinking. Let me tell you that. Sam knows.
Yes. Actual.
I went down by the piers and everything. But I think my guy just took me everywhere throughout the entire level. I think I did all that.
Can you go both routes? I didn't know that.
I think I did.
I mean, the only time I've ever done that is when I've been playing in lone wolf mode, because after you beat it, I think all the difficulties, you can unlock it where you can just go through the levels solo. But yeah, no, that's the first I've heard of someone having to go through both routes to get all the items. Maybe if it's a higher difficulty and your teammate's so dumb they get themselves killed, and then you have to go complete the stuff they were supposed to do. But otherwise,
can they do puzzles for you? Because when I got down, I was I got down to a power puzzle you were supposed to do, and for no matter what I do, he wouldn't do anything. And that makes sense if someone else already did the puzzle, so it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, that's what happened to Stefan in Hellfire. The map puzzle he was talking about, the other character, Yoko, had already solved it for him.
Yeah, that's how I didn't have that golden key to do power up the thing to go in the elevator or some crap. Yeah
to turn on the emergency ladder. Yeah,
that's right.
I love how often it comes up on the podcast where Mike will do something without understanding it in a game and just unintentionally be way better at the game than anybody realizes.
Yeah, you Resident Evil harder than us, Mike.
It's like Mike has somehow found a way to play video games on an entirely different level than any other human being. We'll be like, "Oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize you were supposed to press the button. I just killed the guy I just killed him with a knife." And everyone's like, "You killed him with a knife? What? How?"
I just follow a guide. I don't play a lot of games without a guide anymore, especially for the show.
The way to solve any problem is if you can give Mike a guide, he will just follow it to the letter without really realizing. That's how you solve all of the world's problems. Is find a guide and give it to Mike. He's like, I don't really understand what I was doing, but I solved hunger.
That brings me to the other thing again. Just kind of touching back on the ordinary people in extraordinary situations. This is a game where you could have a cocktail waitress kill a tyrant with a knife. Just let's do this, and she can just take him out twice.
I didn't even say that earlier, but that second boss, what was it? Or the third boss, the worm, whatever it was.
Oh, the Queen Leech.
Yeah, I killed that with a mop. So that's what this game is.
That's another thing we should mention. There are melee weapons, kind of like a la Silent Hill, all over the place too.
breakable ones, yeah.
Some characters can make them. You can find them.
Yeah, David can craft items. He can take a stick and to tape a knife to it, turn it into a spear. He can take a lighter and tape it to a pesticide can to make a flamethrower.
Yeah, that's another thing that needs to, if they do a remake, that needs to be greatly expanded. Because I don't know if I want it to be like full on like
Rising.
Dead Rising, where it's like ridiculous and that's part of the joke.
David did it first, all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would love to have a remake of this game where like you go into like you're in that bar and like all the bar stools, all the bottles behind the bar, like everything is feasibly a weapon. That is
you can make Molotovs.
Yeah, like or just like break the bottles in the bar and you've got like a weapon to stab with, or you like break the beer tap off and that's a like.
Yeah. And if you make Molotovs, that's how you unlock the Hellfire episode.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I know it's so like in my head, it's such like a like over the top ambitious idea, but like I've seen what Capcom is capable of. My expectations are only high because of what they've delivered.
Yep.
You can make a taser rod too. Oh, sorry.
We should talk about the multiple endings in this game.
Well, 28 endings in total, only eclipsed by File 2 with its 32 endings.
Yeah, we'll just mention quickly too that when you are in the university, you do get the daylight cure. You do escape.
Right, yeah.
You have to take out the tyrant that follows you from room to room, which actually kind of sucked. And
I liked it.
yeah, I mean, like it was fun, but you know, it's terrifying too.
We should talk about the daylight cure. Stefan, what is the daylight cure?
So it's a mix of different chemicals, poison, tyrant's blood, I think, and something else.
T blood, V poison, and P base, I believe.
P base, that's right.
Yeah,
Plant base.
Yeah.
So it's just
I mean, someone
marijuana.
can just pee in a cup
Base
and go,
comes from
"Here
the
we go."
vagina plant.
Yeah,
Isn't this the only cure to the T virus that's ever mentioned in any of the games?
No, actually, in File 2, there's another way of securing a cure, but instead of it being a tangible item and curing yourself, you have to save a researcher who has the formula in her head, and she needs to get out of the city.
Of course.
Well, you escape with
Oh.
in the best ending, you escape with one extra daylight cure if you stayed around to make the extra daylight cure.
Oh yeah, so you
Yes.
can do that. When you make the daylight cure, there's the timer going off that the whole thing's gonna explode and die. Everyone's gonna die, mass hysteria, cats and dogs living together. And so you have to sit there. I think it's every 15 to 20 seconds a daylight cure is produced, and you can grab as many as you want. Well, to
Cure
fill
your
up your inventory.
teammates.
Yeah, you cure teammates, you can cure yourself, and you can also one-hit kill the final boss, the tyrant, with one of them in an ampule gun. Ample gun.
Ample shooter or something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
But that's
If you-
after you fight him at first, and then and then after you get done like beating him, essentially, you get into he gets back up.
Yeah, one last battle. But the daylight is a huge The daylight is a huge factor in the ending because you can either cure yourself and take a sample and escape, and then you get the best ending. You can cure yourself, not have any samples, and then you get a bittersweet ending where they're like, well, I survived, but I feel like the world's kind of fucked now. And then you could not cure yourself. And if you're by yourself, or if you're not one of like a character specific endings, you can get a chopper zombie ending where you zombify as you're escaping the city and you kill the pilots.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then there's 4 specific pair endings: Yoko and Alyssa, Cindy and George, Kevin and Jim, and David and Mark, where they basically they decide to stay behind because they know that, leaving would be too dangerous. And they basically either go out and one last hurrah in the case of Kevin, Mark, and David and Jim, or they have a character bonding moment where, George comforts Cindy and they can already start to feel themselves turning, or Yoko helps Alyssa connect to the internet and send out all of her research, all of her journal notes to another journalist so that the truth of what happened gets out.
The 1990s.
I totally forgot how to connect to the net. Just flip a switch, Alyssa. Jesus.
There's one other.
The idea that the internet is everywhere and you could connect to it at any time and do whatever you want on it.
There's
You just got to get inside the mainframe.
There's one other little thing too in the last boss fight I should mention, because I just think it's hilarious. You can actually damage a door, and behind it is a rocket launcher for no good reason.
What to blow him up with?
As look, we've discussed this in many cases. And Raccoon City is just filled with guns. It is the most violent, dangerous 80s city to ever exist. Everybody owns a rocket launcher and a grenade launcher and multiple flamethrowers. You know,
It
Like
is
a-
the Midwest.
It's like
the
RoboCop
Midwest.
Detroit style of violence. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's just old ladies roaming the streets with like fully automatic rifles, just ready for shit to hit the fan.
They need Koopa coins.
And yet, and despite that fact, the zombies still take over immediately.
All right. Do you have any last things that you want to say about the ending before we go on to questions, comments, and memories?
Well, doesn't
what
this game have an
endings?
epilogue as well?
Everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's one final scene where you see a helicopter flying over and surveying the ruins of Raccoon City, and fucking Umbrella built another lab on top of the ruins.
Oh, it's
I love
almost
it.
like my idea for Resident Evil
Oh,
8 is
God.
completely viable.
God fucking damn it.
Oh, I haven't.
Make
I thought
it
of that
happen,
later.
Capcom.
And it wasn't a helicopter; it's a jet with a camera on it that's going
Oh.
over and says you have like 15 seconds or something, or 15.
Yeah, well, because
Yeah,
the
so-
government is surveying them, and they don't want to let on that they're still keeping tabs on the city.
Yeah. So just to say, I mean, like, would Resident Evil 8 be a better game if it was essentially the zombie version of Behind Enemy Lines with Owen Wilson? I mean, I'm not saying it'd be the best game
God.
ever, but it'd be up there.
So another thing we should mention: some of the other characters have plot points that affect the rest of the series minorly, but it's suggested that Yoko then testifies against Umbrella and helps lead to the down.
Yeah,
Ah,
there's
cool.
character-specific epilogues in File 2, and
didn't
Yoko
know
is
that.
one of the people. Yoko is one of the people who testify. Unfortunately, in the grand scheme of things, it only like helps continue the case. It's not brought down to like 2003 after the Umbrella's End incident.
So you're saying that Umbrella had to break up because Yoko got involved?
Exactly,
that was good.
the Yoko
I
factor.
knew Mike would enjoy that one.
Well, I don't want to talk too much about Outbreak 2 because we probably will.
You're
talk
being a
about,
real Yoko right now, Yoko.
We'll probably talk about file number 2 on the show at some point. So I want to say
Yeah, we'll definitely end up putting it on there because
it won't be
I-
me though. It won't be me.
I do love that the endings kind of encapsulate character arcs for each of the characters. Like Cindy, she'll heal like the firefighter that's in the helicopter who'll have an injury on his leg, and she'll tie it off. And she's like, "Yeah, there's any number of things I can do." Like, yeah, like
The entire rag.
Oh man, I got
that's
that.
why I'm the researcher. I know how to tie knots.
Kevin, like he tosses his stars rejection paper, and I think Yoko gets her memory back. It all comes flooding back, and she's like, "Yeah, I have to tell the world about this."
Is this the raw danger of Resident Evil games?
Yes, actually,
Almost like exactly like to a T.
because they
There's
have
a character with
there's-
amnesia.
There's so many environmental like hazards in this game because you can die from a fire explosion. It's actually part of the checklist for the first scenario. You have to die in the tanker explosion. Just
Yeah.
don't escape.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I did look up the reviews for this, and everyone kind of gave it, like 7 out of 10s, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, reviewed
The
really well.
PAL version, though, was a 5 out of 10.
Yeah. This game is not as good single player.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really funny reading the reviews from this because it's like 1up.com, like C+, like Game Pro, 4 out of 5 stars, Eurogamer 5.
I mean, I understand that. Like, I mean, I played this completely single player and I didn't have a bad experience. I can see why it would get lower score, especially when other places are getting that and you're not.
It's fun to talk to any Australian about any video game because they're so strict with censorship over there. And just like, there's so many other rules that they often get in complete games. We talked to somebody about how did you enjoy this game? And they're like, it was kind of shit. It was only like 2 hours long, and wasn't. It's like, what? The game was like 10 hours of like insane gore, and they're like, no, that got cut out.
All right, I think we should go to questions, comments, or memories. I actually got a bunch for people.
Really?
I was
don't know, I'm
surprised.
That makes sense.
I posted in a bunch of Resident Evil groups, so that had something to do with it.
Oh, there you go.
But in Overblood, I got a couple things. One from friend of the show, also on the MCU with me, Michael Hughes, said the only thing I remember from this game is one of the playable characters is a blonde in a red suit, and teenage me thought she was super hot. I forget
Adult me
that.
thought she was super evil.
That Alyssa Ashcroft?
Yes, that's Alyssa.
From Sebastian Games. I know I pronounced it wrong. Never played it, but I do remember the cover scaring a little kid me. I can understand that. And you guys can agree with this one. From Mark Quesino, he said, I want to remaster, damn it, even if they don't have the online part.
Yeah, do it, Capcom.
You gotta have the
Do it,
online.
Capcom.
part.
Yeah, you
Make it
gotta
happen.
gotta
Make
have
it happen, Capcom. You idiots.
And
Yeah.
I actually got a ton of
Now it's
comments.
never gonna happen.
No, from the
You know-
Resident Evil Star Posting Facebook group. First one from Eid Mohammed Alsanif, a forgotten masterpiece. I think part of the joke now I just pronounce people with names wrong at times. Isn't that part of the show
I
at this
love
point?
your.
You're
I just love
horrible.
your pronunciation. My favorite part is that if you don't know if you can pronounce a word right, you like ask it as if it's a question, as if we have the name in front of us and we can help you, but we don't.
No, only I do. From Will Phillips, said desperately in need of a proper remake. I was a big fan of seeing the events in Racoon City from the eyes of the average citizen. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is kind of something that we've already said, but I like this. What the guy said from Dylan Guadalicia. I have this wet dream about adapting the 2 games of RE Outbreak into a TV series. It seriously has more solid story than any other game in the franchise.
Just
Sort
like
of
Jesse said.
potential, but yeah.
It's definitely got the potential for a series. Do it, Capcom.
From
Make it
Eric
happen.
Hoffman, Outbreak is built like a puzzle or a board game. Same with some other early 2000 games. It isn't meant to just be played from start to end game. The variety and unpredictability is in its replay value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
From Heron Soki, I've always played with the plumber dude because he looked cool. I didn't use him at all.
No.
That's
I
a
didn't like
shame
him.
because he's good. He's fun to play with at times.
Here's a good one. From Tyler Rash, the day this game came out, I quit my first job. It would have been my 10th grade year. I had left to get my GED, so it's fuzzy. Anyway, I had to put in have a day off to stay home and play it on release. No, I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
Nobody's ever done that before.
You did that for RE3 remake.
Nobody's ever done that before.
From Camus
Legally, we cannot say that he did that.
Ahmed Falihala, playing as David in Underbelly, create spear using knife and wooden pool. I didn't know you could fix a
file
pipe
two.
using David's tape.
Yeah, you can use
We
his
talked about
vinyl
that.
tape.
From Ava Cassandra. Anyway, I love Cindy with all my heart. I never
Yeah,
used
Yeah,
Cindy.
everyone loves Cindy.
She's
And-
America's goddamn sweetheart.
And last one from this group, from Taylor Zen Fuller Love. Maybe the best experience I've had with RE.
Oh, all right. You know, funny enough, I should mention that a lot of speedrunners, especially RE fans, speedrunners, this is usually their favorite game, and not just for speedrunning. I mean, it's just a thing in the community, which is probably why you should remake it, Capcom.
Yeah, it's like
It's got-
Capcom listens to this.
Well, what's great about it being so speedrun friendly is it feels natural and not forced. You know, it's built into the meta game of the whole game. You have to be fast or you die.
And
Yeah.
which is cool. I have a couple to read from the Resident Evil Veterans Facebook group. From Phoenix White, no multiplayer RE has come close to replicating the greatness that was this in File 2.
I agree.
From Samuel
No shit.
Samuel Piamont, hardest Resident Evil for me. Yeah, I can. Okay, I can.
Oh,
I
it'll
can
kick your ass for sure.
Yeah.
I should have written down all the weird things everyone says, so I could just respond to all of these with the voice lines.
That would have been funny.
The
From
one I
Zanny
remember is
Thomas,
bullshit.
Thinking.
love the hospital level.
Huh? Okay.
From Joey
Someone
Bowell,
does.
do you want Capcom game that we need is remastered remake? I'm not
What a
sure.
pain.
From Will Selva, this game was so fun that you didn't feel the loading times. I didn't realize how bad the loading was until I played it a few months ago.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
last one I'm
Yes.
going to read from Judd Frederick Valicina. I'm playing it right now and just as awesome when I first played it back in 03. So
My life is shit.
You're worse than my ex-wife.
Okay, before we go to Shelf or Box, I just want to mention that I know I said that we were going to do our giveaway and announce the names. Well, because of everything happening in real life and in my personal life, we're going to put that off at least another week. So if you haven't entered into the contest to win a copy of Stalker, into our drawing to win a copy of Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, just send us do a tweet, do a Facebook post. We're going to push back right another week too, just to give people more time. And then send it to gamesmymomfound@yahoo.com, just a screenshot of proof that you did it, or tag us in whatever social media that you use.
Mm-hmm. Just share us. You're
Yeah.
good.
So,
Yeah.
And I think we should go to Shelf or Box.
I have one last question though before we go to there. All right. So for everyone here, who was your favorite character? Not just gameplay wise, but just in general, who was your favorite character in this game? Out of the
Yeah.
Raccoon Age.
I only use Kevin, so.
Mhm. I think we already know my answer.
Oh my god. Stu?
Alexia Ashford.
Really? I had to go with Yoko for the inventory space just to reduce the stress.
I mean, Yoko is my favorite. Alexia Ashford is the bad lady from Code Veronica.
In terms of personality and gameplay structure, Cindy, she's fantastic, and I love her commentary on things. Second in that, though, very close second is Alyssa. Just personality alone, she's just so. One of her main phrases, just "I have bigger balls than most of you," and I'm like, you know what? I believe you.
I really want in a remake of this game. I love if they like just went like with her character, especially they just went like really fucking like offensive with all of her language. Where like a zombie attacks, she's just like fuck.
read one of her articles. It's actually very well worded. The infection began here, and the citizens are very concerned. In reality, get out of here, you cocksucking son of a bitch!
Yeah.
Shit.
I actually have one more question too before we go to Shelf or Box. So I want to see how much the want is for this, because Capcom is rumored to be remaking more games. It might be Code Veronica, it might be Resident Evil 4.
It is Resident Evil 4. They announced that.
Yeah, I'll wait till they say it. I don't know. I don't care.
They announced they basically announced it, and then everyone was like, no. And so I would not be surprised if they were like, just kidding.
But would you want one of those two, or would you rather have an Outbreak?
I'd rather have Outbreak, to be honest.
I'd rather have an Outbreak.
Code Veronica.
But, and this is going to sound weird, I'd rather have an Outbreak, but I almost want a different studio to handle. And that's not saying anything against like Capcom. I think they do really good jobs with their remakes. I think they're all like really. With Resident Evil 3 remake was like showing it was showing its seams a little bit at points,
rushed.
But
it was rushed.
Yeah, it didn't feel
way rushed.
It didn't feel as like intricate and well thought out as Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 1 back in the day. So it's not like I don't think they can handle it. I want a different studio that is good at different things to do it. It would be interesting to see a studio that is more known for making like not really open world games, but open-ended games handle it.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be a good studio, because as we've seen before, when they hand it off to not a very tried and true studio, it doesn't always work out. So, I mean, it would have to be somebody that I think the fans would have confidence in handling the series. Or at least somebody with a good pit. Yeah,
somebody who doesn't just do app games.
Oh, God. I really like State of Decay and State of Decay 2. Sam knows this, so I wouldn't mind like Undead Labs handling it and doing something more in the vein of that. But I don't think they're very good at. They've never really made like a big game like that. Those are both like. I mean, State of Decay 1 was an Xbox Live Arcade game. Really,
they're budget titles.
Yeah. So it needs to be a different studio. But my idea of it is that you could do something really, really cool.
I have to say, I don't want a Resident Evil Outbreak remake. I just want a straight up remaster. I want them to take the game, polish it up, actually, update I don't think they have to really try that hard to upgrade the looks, the graphics of it all. They just got to polish it up, refine the mechanics, add in the stuff that they already added in File 2, put it all together in one big package, give it online capability, which they are totally capable of doing.
Yeah.
And just unleash it.
I wouldn't be disappointed with a remaster.
Mm-hmm. They could even bait us in by making a new Outbreak and including a remaster of the original.
I wouldn't be disappointed with like any attempt by anybody to say like we're going back and we're doing Outbreak again. I'd be like, cool, I can't wait to see what it's gonna be.
Yep.
I had a rule that like so far I haven't had to break all the way, but I basically have played a little bit of every single Resident Evil. And every time a new Resident Evil title comes out, as I'm such a fanboy, of course I have to pick it up and try it out. That being said, there are plenty of Resident Evil titles that I don't like. But...
It's a lot like Indiana Jones, where it's like a beloved franchise, but really it's like 50% of them are pretty good. The other 50% are like
in there.
Yeah.
So Sam, have you played Dead Aim? That's a pretty good Resident Evil.
No.
I'm not kidding. I like that game.
Hard to disagree on that.
I know.
The one thing I will say, and I won't go any further, Operation Racoon City was hands down the coolest concept and hands down the worst possible delivery.
Yeah.
That's true. I disagree. But
yeah.
A plot so confusing. I thought they were going into time travel with it, because it's like, why did they want Leon dead? Who the fuck is he the Umbrella at this point in time?
Should Should Capcom? This is a big question at the end of the show, but I think about this sometimes. Should Capcom switch to being just a publisher rather than a developer and just say, we have this idea, we're going to find a developer to make it? Because their ideas are all great. Oh, I think they're all great, but their execution it can be pretty iffy.
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like they need to restructure a bit. Like, I don't think they're Konami level terrible right now, but they really need to start giving their projects more time. Maybe don't announce them so prematurely, and then put a harsh time limit. Like, okay, they're expecting a Resident Evil 2 remake. You got 2 years. Go.
Yeah, figure it out. It's it's hard. It's always hard to ask for anything specifically because
you're giving them money.
We've seen, but we to say okay, you've got 2 years to do this. It's oh no, obviously give them more time. But then we've seen now, especially what happens when studios, particularly movie studios, when they say we're not going to interfere at all with this big budget franchise that's beloved and is supposed to have a central story, and then you have something like Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker that are just completely different, and there was no oversight whatsoever, and it was just a huge kerfuffle and mess. And it's hard to it's really hard to make a game. It's really hard to make things, and it's a perfect balance needs to happen. And so I really, really, really want Outbreak to come out, and I really, really want it to be good. But I'm always I'm gonna stay out of the conversation until Capcom is comfortable with how they made it.
They have to be willing to embrace it as part of their library fully, without more than just references. They have to actually be. They have to be able to step outside and look at the external problems of what happened between the production delays and the fact that the internet tech just wasn't there yet.
Yeah, and I love Capcom for doing kind of not gimmicks, but they end up being kind of gimmicky. I love what they try to do with online and different gameplay styles. Resident Evil 6, I thought was such a cool idea when it came out, of the campaigns interlinking together, and so you could play online and go into somebody else's campaign with your campaign. That's such a cool idea.
Do you want to know something funny about you bringing up 6?
What?
The main director of Resident Evil Outbreak was the director for Resident Evil 6.
Really?
Oh, way.
Yeah, is why I was ham for 6. I was okay, it's definitely going to be good. And then I was oh, fuck, no, this was bad. This was really, really bad.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Just how 6 is structured and the way it was set up. And that, again, that's gimmicky, but that's a really cool idea. But it's it needs, the balance needs to be there between the gimmick and the execution.
The execution needs to be better than just the concept.
Yeah, Capcom is so good at coming up with concepts, and their track record it's not spotless. So
it's been hit or miss.
Yeah.
All right, I think we should go to Shelter Box finally.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'll go first.
Also, remake Dino Crisis. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there's a whole
for
Facebook
real.
group for
Do
that.
it, you cowards.
It's about time. Jesus Christ. Come on.
I was unsure where to put this game because I enjoyed parts of it, but I was so stressed out playing it. And I was actually going to put it in the box for the longest time, but as we've been talking, I've been thinking about it. It's going on the shelf. It's a really good Resident Evil game. I mean, even though it's not your normal RE game where you go through an entire game where you kind of keep your same items and you are juggling inventory and you're hoarding stuff throughout the game. At least I am. Most people in the show probably are. It takes it all away from you because you can't hoard anything. You have no chest, but it was a good game. It's going to go on the shelf, and it's something that for anyone who loves RE who might have never played this, I'm going to recommend the same with Dead Aim. How about you, Stefan?
Yeah. Good. So again, I only played those first 2 scenarios back in the day, and then now I get to finally finish the game, which regretfully, I'm sad that it took me this long to get here, because seeing that side of what happened, the tragedy and the city falling apart, is something that we've all always wanted. And I don't know why I waited so long to play this game, but seeing those characters in these settings, and all the settings popped in this game, every single level, I loved all of them. It's going on the shelf. I mean, Cindy Lennox, what's not to love? So yeah,
the other 7 are cool too.
Tom Cruise is okay, I guess.
It is going to stay on my shelf next to my Canadian copy of File 2. I absolutely. Honestly, it's in my top 3 favorite Resident Evil games of all time. It might just be my favorite Resident Evil game of all time. Superb soundtrack. Definitely my favorite soundtrack in the series. Really encapsulates the tragedy of Racoon City. And anyone out there, if you haven't heard it, look it up online. The theme alone is just beautiful. The cast, they're all engaging. They all have their own quirks. I love playing through the scenarios as each of the Raccoon 8 and seeing their different perspectives on things. And again, just the core thesis of this whole thing: ordinary people in extraordinary situations. A breath of fresh air, right before Resident Evil 4 hit the market and kind of just shelved all of that again.
Jesse, do you want to tell that story about the thing you wrote about the theme song?
Oh, yeah. So my copy of the Resident Evil Outbreak soundtrack, I actually won in a contest. Someone in a Resident Evil forum, really nice guy, basically wanted us to write a detailed review about our favorite track of all time. And I wrote about the Resident Evil Outbreak theme. And then I went above that and I'm like, also, here's the reason I like this other track from the soundtrack and this other track, and just kind of exploring, like going, like, yeah, and then it builds to the crescendo and the explosion of the city, and it's just, you feel the weight of everything. And he's like, wow, no. The contest had only been going for a day. He's like, no, screw it, you win. You obviously, you love the music, you get it.
Yeah.
How about you,
sorry.
Sam? Oh, no,
Go ahead.
This game,
Real quick, just to cut you off.
I'm sorry. I thought he was done. I'm so sorry. If you have anything else to say, please go ahead.
I was just going to add one last thing I forgot to mention. For the longest time, I didn't get Resident Evil 3. Like, every copy I got turned up broken. So for the longest time, this was, when I do my full series playthrough, that was what I filled in for what happened at Raccoon City. I'm like, all right, finish 2, now Outbreak.
This game is deserving to go on everyone's shelf for the cover art alone. I mean, I'm telling you, it just looks good on the shelf. It really does. Get the poster. And if you do anything with Outbreak, at the very least, please go watch the intro to Outbreak. You'll thank me. It's perfect. This game is almost everything I've ever wanted from a Resident Evil game, apart from a little bit of rough gameplay issues that I had because I never got to play it online. And I'm convinced that if I had played it online, this would be my number one. It's just got a great soundtrack. It's got a great setting. It's got great levels. It's got great characters. Great little bits of lore, everything. Like, it just really comes together in the one place you've always wanted to explore. And for that reason, it's always going to be on my shelf.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how about you, Stu? Finish it up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going on my shelf, but it's just because it just hits every note for me of what I love in video games. Mainly that it's Resident Evil, it's a zombie game, but also it's so clearly thought out and it's so ambitious, and they had such an idea of like what they wanted the game to be, and even if the execution wasn't perfect, the ideas behind the game are really, really, really cool. And I'll forgive a game being terrible if just the idea of the game is cool enough for me. I'll play like any stupid game, which is this is not a great endorsement of anything, but I'll play any stupid game if like the idea behind it I think is just really cool. But Outbreak manages to be a really cool and good game while also having these really ambitious and cool ideas that it was just too early. It just 2003 wasn't a good year for this game to come out on PlayStation 2, for it to have this online capability that we were still kind of figuring out for a while. I mean, Halo 2 came out after this game, and I remember playing Halo 2 online. You had to buy the stupid speaker box thing for the Xbox controller. I don't know if anyone remembers that shit.
God.
Like that was what we were dealing with online a year after this game came out. And so had it come out like
the next gen
later, just if it was just next gen, I feel like it would be people's favorite Resident Evil game, hands down. A lot of people's.
Mm-hmm. It still is, even without all that stuff.
Without that stuff, it's so beloved. And it's just Capcom keeps talking about it, keeps referencing it, and I want them to remake it because it could be so cool. It's absolutely going on my shelf. This game is just, the game is great, and then outside the story of the game is also fantastic. So I absolutely loved experiencing this, and I will go back and play through it many more times and beat it many more times. And File 2 will be on the podcast next season.
Oh, great. But that does keep up. Resident Evil is the only series on this podcast that we keep finding a way to fit in all the time.
Yeah, we still haven't beaten Silent Hill, but we're finding a way to cram in every Resident Evil game.
I will
Resident Evil.
be here for most of them.
We're gonna beat Stalker before we beat Resident Evil, I think. It'll
Well,
be close.
we got one Stalker left to cover.
Well, yeah, but I'm definitely gonna make us play Metro after we beat Stalker.
I'm okay with that.
Definitely gonna be a whole thing.
Yeah, and nobody, don't worry. Silent Hill is coming.
I just
coming.
tried to Google Silent Hill so I could see like which games we'd played and which games we had to remind myself. And I just Googled Silent Evil Outbreak.
Don't read my fan fiction. It's not ready yet.
Silent Evil Outbreak Homecoming.
We only played Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill Homecoming so far. That's it. Or Silent Hill Origins.
We
right?
haven't played Homecoming yet. No.
Yeah, we played Origins.
Yeah.
Oh, you poor bastards.
We haven't played-
Origins was really fucking good, man.
I liked
game.
it.
No, I'm not talking
We
about
haven't
Origins.
played
I
one of
mean,
the
from
best
when you
games
play,
of all time, Silent Hill 2. We are avoiding that for some reason.
That's going to be on the show in a couple weeks.
for whenever you guys play Homecoming, I'm just like, you poor bastards.
Yeah, that's not
I don't mind Homecoming, which is not like a ringing endorsement, but I had fun.
All right, and Stu, do you want to introduce what's going to be on next week?
Sure.
remember
Talk
you.
about yourself for a couple minutes while I look it up.
I'll
Just
tell a
play
funny
the outline I
story.
sent you.
I'll tell a funny
Yeah.
story real quick. I actually, when I was playing this game, I finished it minutes before we recorded it. I had turned it
Literally.
on,
Yeah.
and
Literally.
I plugged in my headphones, and I forgot to turn down the volume, so I just heard this big booming voice go, "Outbreak!"
I love spamming that menu, just back and forth, just outbreak.
It's gonna be super annoying when that's Sam's ringtone for the rest of the fucking
Hell yeah.
year. So yeah, okay. So next week, now that I have it, next week we are playing the 2007 Orange Box Classic Portal.
Ooh.
Interesting. Can we talk about a puzzle game for an hour? Stay tuned and find out.
Yes. Well, there's more to talk about with that. We'll talk about the Orange Box and Valve in general. It's the first Valve game we played.
What it meant for Valve at that time in history. I'm sure there's a ton of behind the scenes stuff. It'd be great
What
to
it
talk
meant
about.
for fucking. I mean, I imagine we'll be able to talk about just the Orange Box in general and what that meant for fucking Xbox.
Yeah, there's a story to tell about Portal as well.
Yeah, that's a game that doesn't seem that big, that has like a huge amount of information out there surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll figure out. But and so that about wraps up everything I do need to say. One, I want to say that this game kind of fits what's currently happening this past week.
Yeah, God.
I mean, we're not having a zombie outbreak, but we picked this game way in advance. But we had the Corona outbreak going on through all of 2020 so far. We had the riots, and I don't live in Minneapolis, but I live in a suburb of St. Paul. So the riots are not that far away from me. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the riots.
I was streaming Resident Evil 3 last night. I was very inebriated, and Sam was watching on the live stream. And one of the first things it mentions in the Resident Evil 3 remake is it's like, look at all these riots going on during this pandemic. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
That
Hit the
was
nail
a
on
little
the head.
unsettling, huh?
Yeah.
I will say this game's oddly inspiring, honestly, in these times. When I was revisiting it, and it's like, yeah, you're right. Things are pretty shitty right now, but you do have to survive. You go for it.
Yeah, it just and like one reason why I had a hard time playing this game for a personal reason, which I'm going to say on the show, anyone that is still listening, is I lost my father-in-law this past week. But as and playing a horror game after you're going through all that kind of trauma, it's not fun.
Mhm.
It's really hard.
We almost even told Mike, like, look, me and Stu will handle this. And Mike's like, no, not you two.
No,
I
Anybody
love
but
this
you.
show. My wife does listen to this. So it's okay.
Sorry.
And I can't. I will be here every episode unless I can't be. And yeah, so far that hasn't happened yet. But
It's true. Mike
So-
told us the other day that we are number 5 in New Zealand. I was like, okay, Mike, calm down a little bit. Ease off that break. Yeah.
I haven't been promoting. I've been real like after what happened to me because I had walked in and found my father-in-law after he had died of, I'm assuming, a heart attack. It's like it hit me and I just couldn't do anything. But also like playing this game, I didn't like after being in that situation, finding someone that passed away, and then having to fight zombies. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need this right now.
No one will blame you for wanting to rush through the game.
Yeah.
I'd beaten the first 3 chapters before he had passed, and then the 4th and the 5th chapter I struggled through because I just couldn't. But at the same time, I wanted to finish it for the show.
Yeah, if anybody has any doubts about Mike's passion, here's your evidence.
It's part of my.
What was it, Mike? The only game you haven't finished is Beautiful Joe.
I apologize,
Sam.
Mike. It's a good game, I swear.
It's a good game. It's a really good game, but I couldn't beat it back in the day, and I still never beat it. Maybe one day I'll emulate it and finish it that way, but
Don't do that to yourself.
No, I probably won't. That game was terrible.
I love Beautiful
I
Joe.
think Beautiful Joe gets so much hate on this show. Oh, and I think
My favorite part about Beautiful Joe was Sam going, "You should play Beautiful Joe." I'm like, yeah. You
Didn't
should
one
play
of those
Beautiful
games
Joe.
like brick people's consoles? There's like a demo or something. Or no, it wiped people's memory cards. Like if you
Yeah.
tried playing a demo.
Yeah.
Oh, Beautiful Joe.
All right. And I do want to say, as I said earlier, we are still doing the contest. I'll talk about it more next week because we'll let it go a little longer just because of everything that's going on currently in our world, at least here in the USA. Plus, I'm too busy to worry about content. But I want to follow us on
That's the
Facebook.
price we pay for getting a full release of Resident Evil Outbreak.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Where I constantly am usually posting screenshots for the upcoming game. In this case, there'll be a bunch of blue and orange portals next week. Also, gonna give a quick shout out to our awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Bobby, aka Mike Stoney, who's gonna be on the show at some point. Sometime from now, but he's gonna be on the show. I finally got that ironed out, and we should have him on the show to talk with him for the first time since we've mentioned his name over 100 times, almost 100 times at this point.
Yay.
Well, more than I have mentioned him 100 times, just not published 100 times. All right, and I think that about wraps up what I need to say. I want to thank Sam and Jesse for taking time out to join us again. Always
Thank you.
returning guests. And we will see. And also, we do comic episodes every month. We do MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. I'm currently passing through that. You got Iron Man 2 that just came out last month, and you'll have Thor later in June when you're listening to this. So definitely check those out. And we will talk to you. We will see you guys next week.
Hi.
Bye.
Hi there.
Hopefully we'll
Hi.
be still alive.
Ah, damn it, I hate you.